All right, welcome. The Complete Bible Overview, Part 3. You are awesome if you have made it this far. We are going to complete this three-course course, technically is what it is, with our third part of the Complete Bible Overview, putting the pieces of the Bible together. And that's really what we've been doing. We've put some of the important pieces together in a cohesive story. And so what we want to do is just quickly review where we've been and get into where we're going. So part one, what did we cover? Well, we looked at everything from before creation all the way up through the prophet Samuel. We did that in 11 modules, and that is there for you to go review. But these were the topics that we had covered. And so this was really the foundational part, understanding a lot of the covenants, understanding the creation and the fall, and really starting to see how God is working through this people group, through the nation of Israel, in order to bring forth the ultimate goal, which is the Messiah, which we're going to dive into deep in this one in part 3. So from after that, though, we went in from part 2, we looked at the kings of Israel, and that we went all the way up to the Messiah arrives. So we didn't get into the Messiah, but basically from the time of the kings all the way up to when the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, arrives on the scene. That's the scope of part 2, and these were the 6 sessions that we looked at in part 2. Talked about the kings, the split of the nation, the north and south, and then we really got into the prophets, because the prophets are truly central to the development of the storyline of the Old Testament and God and his people. So we spent a lot of time with the prophets, major prophets, minor prophets, and we ended with the prophet Daniel, who talked about some of the visions of the coming empires. And really, after that, there was a period of space, 400 years, where there really was no prophetic voice from God until the final prophet, John the Baptist, in the New Testament. So now we are up to part 3, and so here we are going to complete the Bible. And so we're going to start by looking about the Messiah. That's going to be our first session. That's this module here. And then we're going to go all the way down through Revelation. So we got a lot to cover in part 3, but I wanted to review some of the goals of the course, just again to remember and remind ourselves why we're here, what we're going after. Because remember, what we talked about is we want to develop a framework of the Bible. And that framework is made up of the answers of 4 big questions. And let's review these really quick, because some of these we've already answered, and I want to see where we're at with each of these. So the first question, what is the main theme of the entire Bible? We talked about this in the first module. The main theme is rulership. God is sovereign over all things. And man, have we not seen that in action? Have we not seen the sovereignty of God at work in this story? Absolutely we have. So we talked about that main theme. We're going to continue to see it unfold. And there's going to be some surprises that we're going to encounter in the New Testament that we are going to be in part 3. So number 2, what are the most significant events and people in the biblical storyline? Well, we've been covering that a lot, and the answer to that is the 12 major events of the nation of Israel. By studying these 12 events, which we have gone through a lot over the last, especially in part 2, these are the 12 events that have made up the full bulk of the course so far. Starting with the call of Abraham, the birth of Isaac, and going all the way down through the development of the nation, the giving of the law, the kings, the split, and everything that has led us to this point where we're going to now look at the culmination. Understanding these 12 events have really provided a framework for us in understanding the key people and how they relate to the key development of the biblical storyline. So the third one that we're going to look at, or that we looked at, is what are the most important biblical covenants and why do they matter? And we know that the covenants matter hugely, and there are 4 of them that we have covered of God, his covenants with the nation of Israel. So let's review those again really quick. So there are 4 main covenants of the Old Testament. They are the Abrahamic, the Mosaic, the Davidic, and the New Covenant, right? The Abrahamic was that God was going to create a nation that would be a blessing to the world. The Mosaic was a contract with that particular nation that was based on their obedience. It was a conditional covenant that contained some unconditional stuff too. We'll talk about that. We already did. The Davidic covenant was really a covenant saying that there was going to be a king that would come through the line of David, and that king would have a kingdom that would never end. And the New Covenant would be the kind of the final covenant, which would replace the Mosaic covenant and bring ultimate forgiveness and restoration between God and people. So we reviewed those a lot. Don't need to spend more time on them, but we're going to see how they unfold in this new section here in part 3. So the final one was, where do we fit in God's storyline, and what is our role? And what we first said when we first introduced this question was that we were invited in to God's rulership with him over the earth. We are co-rulers with God. He has placed mankind at the height of the creation order. We are still underneath God's sovereignty, but he has invited us in to co-rule with him. And that was kind of the initial answer of where we fit, at least as a people. Where do people fit? But we're going to see there's actually a new answer that is now added on top of this. And not only are we invited into God's rulership, which we broke and rejected, and that, dealing with the whole sin problem, but what we're going to see now is that we are invited into God's covenant promises through faith. See, all of these covenant promises that God had made with this one particular people group were always intended to be opened up to everybody. And so now we're going to see how that particular piece unfolds through faith. We talked about that a little bit with Abraham, but we're going to review it, and we're going to now see how it culminates in the New Testament era. So how exactly do we come into this covenant? I mean, how exactly does this happen? Well, the short answer, as we know, is through Christ. Christ changes everything. This Jesus of Nazareth, who is the Messiah, is going to change everything from here forward. And so there's going to be some surprises that we haven't seen, and there's going to be some amazing changes that are now going to come forth in part 3 and in the New Testament era that we're going to see. So now we're going to look at the Messiah, this person, and let's start by examining the people who heralded him, right? Who were the heralds of the Messiah? So let's look at that in our next unit. We want to look at who were those people that announced that the Messiah had come. And so in our next unit, in Unit 2, we're going to do that as we look at the heralds of the Messiah's arrival.